So today we're going to have a look at how to work with data and analytics within the Intuiface platform. First, I will present you a few samples that you can download for free directly within your Composer edition, and all the new concepts that we are going to use today. We'll see with these concepts how to load external data in your experience using both a web service and an Excel file. We'll see how to work with this loaded data, and then how to write data outside of Intuiface. Same thing, using an Excel file and using web services. The web service will be the analytics engine that we provide, and which will enable you to record all the user interactions. Okay, let's start with the samples. After I exit this play mode, because right now I am using Composer in play mode, I will show you where you can download these ones. So you can download the photo exhibition. We are going to reuse the Excel file from this sample today. It's a gallery based on an Excel file with 3 different categories. Have a look at the science quiz, right? That's an interactive quiz. Everything is built upon Excel. So very easy to modify, very easy to make it your own quiz, starting from this sample. The interactive maps here, it's a mix of Excel-based and web services-based data. So you can see the comparison between how to load external data from Excel and from web services, and we will see today together that it's the same mechanism. So very easy to use. Last, the real estate property search is the one we are going to study today too, along with the photo exhibition. So the web services that I created, the interface itself that I created for the demo and for this sample. So we'll see how to access real-time information using a United Kingdom web service. Okay, let's have a look at the concepts. Before I forget, I just want to show you here in the File menu, if you go in Show Experiences panel, and here in the Marketplace tab, you can find the samples I was talking about. So here the real estate property search, the science quiz, the photo exhibition, and the interactive map. Those 4 ones are using dynamic data sources, Excel or web services, and there are some other ones. So have a look at them, they can be a great source of inspiration for you. Okay, so let's go with the concepts. I will assume today that you're already quite familiar with Intuiface and you know all the basic concepts that we present in the introduction webinar. If it's not the case, please register to the next webinar session or have a look at the record, which is available on YouTube. The assets, the collections, design accelerators, I think you know them already. Content library also. Today we'll have a look at the interface asset, the button number 4 here. I will also assume you're quite familiar with the properties and the triggers and actions mechanisms, and we are going to use them a lot today. So the new concepts are interface assets, binding, and value converters. Let's start with the IAs, interface assets. So here in this panel, you can add a new interface asset to your scene. Those ones are all the IAs, all the plugins, which are provided by Intulab directly in Composer for free. You can also create your own ones as soon as you are an Enterprise Edition user. These plugins will enable your interface experience to communicate with the outside world, to work with data, to work with business logics, to work with peripherals. For example, the analytics engine will allow you to report the user interaction to our server, some device information to get info about your system, about the tablet you are using. The Excel, we'll have a look at this one later today. Some Google Web Services to geocoding web services. Internet of Things category, you can control physical lights, light bulbs with this Philips Hue plugin. You can use peripherals like the Kinect, like the lip motion. You can encode information into a QR code. You can use this custom interface asset is the one we'll use today, the real estate one using Zoopla's web service from UK. You have some sharing assets allowing you to share images, documents via email, via file system or USB key. can display some social media content like Flickr, Instagram, RSS, Twitter feeds. You have time-based plugins like the clock. We're going to have a look at this one right now. Some value operators and the local weather. Good. Let's take a simple one. As I mentioned, the clock. So here I select this one and I press the Add button. Now this plugin, this IA, is added to my project. As opposed to classic assets, an interface asset does not belong to a scene, right? It belongs to the experience itself. Consider it as a global component, as a virtual object that you can access at any time from any scene in your experience. Now if I drag and drop this one into my scene, now I get a visual representation of this data source, of this interface asset. I can drag and drop it a second time. I will get a second visual representation, right? I can drag and drop it in another scene. It will represent the data contained in the interface asset using visual assets from Composer. Let me remove this one. Okay, what is this visual representation? It is only a group with a rectangle shape for the background, 2 texts, 3 images for the needles, and 2 rectangles for the separators. That's it. This is the default look Intulab decided to add to the clock interface asset. Of course, you can break it. You can take this text 4 times and move it to the front layer and then move it somewhere else. And you can also create your own representation, your own look, your own style for any IA that we provide, that Intulab provides. Let's see how it works. I'm going to take a simple text asset like this. Okay. Now if I normally, to enter the text, you would double click and say it is 7:18. Oops. 7:18 p.m. something like that, right? But this is non-dynamic. Whereas this text here is bound to the data source using a binding. So if I open the properties panel here for this text, you see the text property? If I go to the right side, I have a button saying get value from. You can also use the binding mode here if you want to bind several properties at the same time. So we use this one. So for this text property, I don't want to write manually the content, right? I want to get the value from somewhere else. And the source will be my clock interface asset. I could select an element from my scene, right? But here I want to get the value for my text property from my model, from my data, from the clock interface asset. And here are all the properties available for this specific plugin. We wanted to have a look at the long time. This is the one we have here. This is the exact same information. We present it into 2 different text assets with 2 different fonts, font size, why not colors? I can just switch to the long date, or maybe let's take the complete date time like this one. So the binding is the link between the visual asset, the visual elements you are used to use in Composer, and the interface asset which contains the data behind. So this was concept number 2, the binding. Now the third one can be very useful if the data you have on the back end is not proper to a user visualization. If you want to transform it a little bit before showing the value to the final user of your experience. Let's take the example with this complete date, right? It's quite long. Maybe I want to display it in a shorter way. Here, when I hover the property, when I hover a bound property, I have a new button here, which is Add a Converter. If I click on that, then I can select different converters. Here we are talking about a date, so we'll use the date format. There's only one converter with 2 properties. The language is quite an easy one. If I switch, for example, to French, we are mercredi 19 août 2015. Let me switch back to English. So you can very easily change the language and the format, right? I really don't know how to write this thing, what this thing means, but hopefully, click here for help. Let me click on that link. Every interface asset, every converter has its own article in our knowledge base, in our online documentation. So we were having a look at the parameters here and specifically the format samples. So this is the input, what comes from the clock interface asset. The format is what I have to enter here, and this will be the expected output. Okay, let's try those ones. They seem pretty easy to use. We go back to Composer. So if I remove this and use a simple L, this is the shortest way of presenting a date. New one, August 19th, with the time, with the Wednesday, with the short way of presenting the date. Now if I use uppercase letters, and I get a longer date with August, with the time, and with the full date text, Wednesday. This is the converter, the value converter. It's totally optional. The binding, you will have to use it. If you want to present some data which comes from the interface asset and you want to present it in a visual asset like a text, like an image, we will use bindings for the entire 50 remaining minutes. The value converters, we'll see one sample later, but it's totally optional, but can be very helpful to help you present the data in a good way. Good. Let's see how to load external data, and we are going to see two examples, one using a web service, one using an Excel file. Just a reminder, because I think I forgot it during the introduction, if you have any question during the webinar, you have a little toolbar from the GoToMeeting tool. It should be on the top right corner of your screen, and you have a question box there. So please do not hesitate to ask us questions. Mihai will be here in the chat room to answer you. And by the way, he's posting quite a lot of links from the online documentation we have. So check the chat room. So we are going to load external data using a web service. In particular, the Zooplas real estate web service that you can find in the real estate sample I showed you earlier. So first thing, I need to add my interface assets. So here, select an interface assets. I can use the search toolbar, real estate, property listing. This is the one I want. During this webinar, I will not teach you how to create your own interface assets. We have a few articles in the online documentation explaining you how to do that. I just want to tell you that you can use REST web services as an interface asset, as a plugin. You can use .NET libraries if your player are going to run on a Windows machine. And you can use JavaScript libraries if the player is going to run on Windows, on an iPad, on an Android tablet. So web service, .NET, and JavaScript. And Excel, of course. And just for this REST web service, I want to show you one quick file. I promise this will be the only piece of code you will see today, and it's not really some code, right? It is just a descriptor. This file explains to Composer what is the web service we are going to use, how it works, what is the method available, and what are the entities, the objects we are going to manipulate. In a few words, this is the root, the base URL for the web service, right? That's the web server. And we have one main parameter, which is the API key. I won't show you this one because this is my own personal API key, right? It has one resource with one method, the property listings, so you can search for flats and houses across UK. And this web service is available with this JavaScript file. It's a get HTTP method, and it has a few parameters. An area, am I looking for houses or flats, some number of items, the minimum price, maximum price, etc. All the parameters you would expect from a real estate web service. And the response is this listings object. Now if I scroll up there, I have some schemas, and this will define the objects which will be returned by the web service. This listings has an array of results, which is listing and a few other properties. Every item inside this array will be the famous flats or house we are looking for, and each of them will have an address, a latitude, a longitude, a price, an image, a description, etc. Okay, I'll leave this one on the side and we'll have a look later. So, now that Intuiface knows how to discuss with this web service, how to call this web service, I can just do a drag and drop here on my scene and get those information directly here. So, when I drag and drop the clock, I had a nice clock with a gray background with some needles prepared. Here we don't have any default design, so we are going to create our own ones very quickly. So first thing, I'm only interested into the results of the web service. So I can get rid of this part. Okay, let's see this one. So this is my list, and every item is a list of all the properties I mentioned earlier: address, latitude, longitude, price, etc. Let me show you that. Here we are, right? The address, latitude, longitude, the price, and something like that. Now, as I did with the text asset for the clock, I am going to create my model to present every item of this list, right? Let's do this quite quickly. I'm not a very good designer, right? So I will do a very basic design. One background, one image, one text. Okay. So the background will be like this, white background with a black border, okay. The image will be, let's say, something like that. And the text will be something like this with the address. Okay. Now, as I did for the clock, I am going to use the binding, right? For the image, I don't want to look for an image on my drive, on my hard drive, on my computer. I want to bind this image property to my data source. I'm not talking about the clock here, I'm talking about the real estate web service. So I'm getting the value for my image from the real estate service. It's inside the results. And here, look at that. Those are the properties that we described here. So as soon as you or your developer or third-party company created for you this little file explaining to Composer how to access a web service, then the designer just has to select here, image URL, and it automatically links the image of the result of the web service to the image asset. Look at this, at that nice flat, a parking lot. Okay, I forgot one step, because an interface asset is like an asset. It has properties, it has triggers, it has actions. And here in the real estate properties, we have the ones we saw in the descriptor, the area, the minimum price, maximum price, etc. Let's go with £250,000. And because this is a real-time web service, the list was updated and the first item of the list was updated too. Okay, sounds better. Same thing for the text. I will get the address here. And then even if one property is bound, I can still edit the other ones manually. I can change the font size, the font color, etc. Okay, I will just put it like this. Right-click on the text, duplicate. And for this one, I will change the binding, because here I want to take the price this time. Okay. 250,000. This is a very raw figure, right? It's the way Zoopla decided to stock the price into their database. It's not very a very nice way to present that price to a customer, to a potential customer. So this is the opportunity for us to use a converter. We are going to convert this row 250,000 number using the number format. As for the date format, we have a language, we have a format. You can click the link to get some help, but this one is much easier than the clock. I want a currency symbol, I want a blank, and I want a separator for the thousands. And because we are in UK, well, Zoopla is in UK, English, UK, and then you get the pound sign. Quick and easy. So, these four elements, the background, the image, and the two text, will be my template, my model. Right-click, add into a group. As in PowerPoint, we're creating a group, and this one is going to be my product template. I like to rename the things so it's easier to understand. So we have the list here with the data feed coming from the web service. We have the data template here, which is the model for the first item of the list. If you take the template here in the scene structure and you drag and drop it on the data feed, like this, you apply the template to the feed. And here is your list. So I can just now change the look of my asset grid. By default, that's a vertical one. I can go to an horizontal one. I can even change the collection type and go to an asset flow. The appearance, the behavior is very independent from the feed itself. And there you can adjust all the properties the way you want. I go back to the asset grid. So the step one here was to display the property listings as a list. I will say done. The second step is display property listings on a map. You remember the different properties which were available? We had the latitude and longitude available for every item of this list. So let's see how we can show those items on a map. I'll put my list again here on the side. Right-click, duplicate. So now I have a second list, a second visual representation of the same data feed coming from my web service. I'm going to create a new template using a point of interest image and change this collection into a map. So first thing, I need an image. Here I have my point of interest. Okay, let's add it to the project. And this is going to be my template for the map, right? I don't need to have a group. I can just use a single asset like an image. So if I drag and drop this image onto my new data feed, now I have a beautiful list of huge pinpoints. Okay, never mind. This is an asset grid at the moment, and I'm going to change this collection into a map. Okay, this is my map. Just changing the style. Okay. So here we have a list of point of interest, right? And every point of interest for the moment has a latitude and longitude of 0, 0. Percy is located down there in Africa. Same philosophy. We can bind these properties directly to a property of the data feed. Latitude, we take latitude. Look here, we moved. Longitude, let's take the longitude. Okay. Now if we zoom here in our map, in UK, look at that. All the items are spread around London. Two lists, two times the same data feed, two different templates, and two different collection styles. And those two lists are bound to the same data source. So now here, if I select my data source and change, let's say, the city from London, if I go to Tunbridge, I validate, look here the list, it's changing. And here in the map, if I move down there, I have all the new houses and flats in Tunbridge, the new response from the web service. In play mode, you can just add a text input or some buttons to change the properties of the web service and to get the automatic updates. This is how the local weather works, how the Twitter feeds, the Instagram search works. This is the mechanism. Changing the property of an interface asset and having the response of the web service displayed as a collection with a data template. To do that, all these steps are explained in the article on the knowledge base, and Mihai gave you the link in the chat room, or he's going to give you the link for the data template. Let me do a file save. Here we go. One more reminder, if you have any question during the hour, do not hesitate to use the question box, right? Okay, let's move forward and see how to import data from an Excel file, because we don't always have a web service available, right? Especially during a mock-up phase or a pre-sales phase. Maybe you want just to create a mock-up illustration for your prospect, right? And an Excel file is one of the most simple database in the world and very easy to use. So here we will reuse the Excel file from the photo exhibition sample, the artwork list, the gallery. First step, it's exact same one, add an interface asset. And this one, this time I need to import my Excel file. So I click on Excel. Now I'm asked to select an Excel file. So it's in my resources, webinar, this is the file. Let me show you how it looks like. The first line, those are the titles of the fields, like for a database, right? And then every row is one item in this table. We have 3 different collections. Remember, this is a gallery art. The vintage cars, the African wildlife, and the beautiful Thailand. And for every picture, every photograph, we have an artwork name, an artist, creation date, description, price, and a photo location. Here we have a relative path to the Excel file. You can have an absolute path directly on your hard drive, or much better, an online link, sorry, a web URL. So the 3 solution works: absolute path, relative path, and web links. The advantage of the relative path is that all the media is going to be embedded within your experience and published with your experience. So let's import this Excel file. And as I mentioned, here is the folder, right? So I need to copy this one and paste it into my project. So into my project, under Files, Interface Assets. Now I have a new folder here, Gallery Artwork, because I imported the Gallery Artwork Excel file. Then I can paste my pictures. Okay. So now if I drag and drop my Excel file here, as for the real estate web service, we don't have a default design for an Excel file, right? Intuiface can't guess what you're trying to represent visually. So this is a row representation with 1 row per item and 1 text per column, except for the last one. Here Intuiface managed to guess that this one seems to be an image. So it created an image asset because in the Excel file you had a PNG or JPEG extension. So it's pretty easy now. Step 1, display photos in a grid. Okay, as I did with the point of interest on the map, I'm going to use this image asset, which is already bound to the correct property of my Excel file, as a data template. So just do a drag and drop from here to the data feed. And now I have my list of photos. This is quite fast. Just put it horizontal, adjust the picture size, make it on 3 rows, maybe remove the scroll indicator, the controls, the initial scroll effect, increase the size of this one, and hit play. You have a photo gallery. Without the explanations, it takes 20 seconds. You can scroll the pictures, you have the cars, you have the African wildlife, and at the end you have the beautiful Thailand pictures. Of course, if you open your Excel file and add new rows or remove some rows, it's automatically updated. You have one picture, one image asset representing every row of your Excel file. So, step number 2, display more information about one photo. You can see down there here that I prepared a kind of pop-up, right, with a fake image and with placeholders for the artwork names, the descriptions, the dates, etc. What we're going to say is on this model, which is my photo, let's rename that template, right? It's the model representing every item. So on this template, I'm going to add a trigger and action. When the photo is tapped, then update the different fields in the pop-up and move the pop-up in my scene. Okay, let's do that. So when the photo template is tapped, good. Then in my group, in my pop-up group on the front layer, first I need to update the picture to put the correct one. So I will call an action on the image, the change image action, and here you can bind the parameter of an action. Remember, we used bindings in the properties of an asset. You can also use bindings for an action parameter. And here at the same philosophy, I'm getting the information from my data source. So it's not the real estate one, it's the Excel file. And here in the Excel file, I want to get the photo location. Good. So that's one. Then I need to update the texts. So I have my placeholders here, artwork name. For this one, I want to change the text, so that's the set text action. And same thing, I'm getting the information from the same photo list Excel file, and this is the artwork name. Good. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more to do, and I'm quite a lazy guy, so let's do right-click, duplicate. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, Control D. And then I just have to change description, the action is the same, and update the parameter. Description, we said, take description. Let's do the same for artist. We take artist. For the price, we are going to take the price. And for the creation date, we will use the creation date from the Excel file. Okay, so every information is set. Now I just need one last action on the group itself to move it to the center of my scene. So that's the move to action. I don't know the coordinates, so I can just use this tool and position my item here to the middle of my scene, something like that. Okay, done. Control S to save and play to test the work. So if I click here on the cab, I get a lemon taxi with the same picture I clicked on. Vintage lemon cab company taxi as a description, the creation date, the artist name, the price. I can close it and open another one. Every information is automatically updated. So one trigger, one action per target, and it works for every element of your list. If you add new items into the list in the Excel file, it will work for the new ones too. It's automatic. Okay, we've seen how to import data using web service, using an Excel file. Now we're going to reuse this Excel file and work a little bit with this data to see how to present it in a different way using some filters. So I will copy this list and paste it here so we can work on this blank page. We are going to use one of the fields of the data source, the collection one. We have 3 different values, the vintage cars, the African wildlife, and the beautiful Thailand. So I'm going to create buttons that will display one category or another. So let's add one button here. Okay, it's smaller. This one will be for vintage cars. I'm copying the text. You're going to see why. So when this button is clicked, then we are going to call an action and to change the data source, to work with the data source. I showed you earlier that an interface asset has properties. It has also actions, and in particular, the Excel files have actions. You can edit them, you can add rows, you can delete rows, you can update some cells, and we'll see how to work with that in the next section. And you can also use sort and filterings. Here we want to add a new filter. We want to filter using the collection column. Look at this. This is the first line of my Excel file, right? The database structure. It's automatically generated when you import the Excel file. So column collection equals, and then magic, Control V, vintage cars. And when I apply this filter, I want to apply it on the whole collection, so I need first to clear the column filters before. Good. Right click, duplicate, and duplicate. So this one will be African wildlife. I copy the text. The action is copied, so I just need to update the value of the filter. I want to filter for this one, for the collections, which equals to African wildlife. And same thing for the last one, beautiful Thailand. Copy and change the value. Okay. And now we can just adjust. Save and play. So at the beginning I have no filters, right? So I see both the cars and the wildlife. And if I scroll, the Thailand. If I click on the first button, I will see the vintage cars only. I click the African wildlife, I go to the animals, and if I click on the last one, I will see the Thailand pictures. With this method, you can very easily present a product catalog. Use some categories to narrow the search for some products. You can also have different levels of filterings. Filter on the first column using a category, filter on the second column using some subcategories, and then present your products. You could also have a separate Excel file or Excel spreadsheet with the categories list, so these 3 buttons would be automatically generated. Have a look at the sushi sample in the experiences panel. This is how it works. We have some categories, we have some products, and everything is automatically generated using some data templates and filters. It's a very, very powerful feature. Okay, we've seen how to import data, how to work with it. Now we need to see how to export information from an Intuiface experience to the outside world. So here we are going to see how to create a form and write some information into an Excel file. And the sample will be a guest book. You want your user, your visitor, to send the guest book leaving his or her email address plus a comment. First step, as usual, we need an Excel file. We need an interface asset to write information into. So add an interface asset, Excel file, and I have another one here which I prepared for this step. If I open it, you'll see it's very easy one. It's empty, and it has on the first line 2 fields, email, comment. This is my data structure, right? Very simple database, 1 object, 2 fields. And at the beginning, the database is empty. Okay, let's import this one. Now, I want to drag and drop it on the scene because I don't want to read information from this file. I want to write information into this file. So, to ask the user his email address and his comment, I will need a text input. I will need 2 text inputs, actually. So, one here for the email, like that, Control D, and another one below, larger one, for the comment. For the comment, I want the line map, and I want to align the text at the top of the box. And for better understanding, I want to rename those assets: email input and comment input. Okay. So the visitor will click on the text input. He will use the virtual keyboard to enter the text, and then he will click the send button. So the trigger will be when the send button is released, then we want to write into the Excel file. So when the send button is released, then on my new Excel file here, the user form, I'm going to call an action, not a filtering action this time, right? But an add row. I want to add new information to this worksheet. Look at that. As I mentioned earlier, the UI of Composer adapts itself automatically to the Excel file you import. This is the role of the descriptor. I explained that for the web services. It describes the data structure which is to be handled by Composer. So here you had two columns in your Excel file. You have two fields for your add row action. And now I want to use binding, but not as I did before. I don't want to get information from one of my data sources this time, right? I don't want to take the clock or the photo gallery info. I want to take information from the scene, from the visual elements. And in particular here, I want to take the email input and its text. The text which was entered by the user. Okay? And for the comment, that's the same. Comment input in the text, in the text. Good. Let's try that. So I will enter an email address, webinar@intulab.com. Okay, and I will enter a super comment on multiple lines. Good. And then I click the send button. Okay, nothing happens. That's normal. When I click the send button, the only action I call is write into an Excel file. I didn't ask to empty the text fields. I didn't ask to navigate to another scene, which I would probably do, to say, hey, thank you for signing my guest book, and go back to the introduction of the experience. So here on this send button, I will probably add the row into my Excel file and add another action to navigate to some conclusion or introduction, for example. Now let's have a look at the Excel files. So this is the one I imported, right, in my Intuiface resources, and this one is still empty, and it's normal. As I mentioned earlier, when you import an Excel file or any interface assets, it is embedded into your experience folders. So in your experience folder, have a look into files, interface assets, and then you have a new folder here, user form. That's your Excel folder. If I open this Excel file, then I have my webinar@intulab.com and my super comment on multiple lines, at least in Intuiface, not in Excel. Okay? So don't forget that the files are copied inside the experience. That's pretty easy, right? If you wanted to have more fields, like a first name, last name, just add two columns in your Excel file and import it again, period. On the add row action, you would have two new parameters, add two bindings, and you're done. That's pretty easy to enhance. So we've seen how to write information into an Excel file using an action on the interface asset. It's going to be the same with a web service, and we're going to look at that using the analytics engine. So here my scenario is going to be, I want to record some user navigation choices when it goes from a scene to another one. I want to count the number of views for each photo, so we'll go back into the gallery scene. And I want to store the personal information that he's going to enter. That's the guest book. So let's make a mix of those three steps. And let's go back to the gallery one. Okay, so first thing, we want to use the analytics interface asset. You're starting to get used to that, right? Add an interface asset and select the analytics. Add. Okay, I have my new engine. It has only one property. It's active, okay? And then we're going to call the action as we call the add row action in the Excel file. So, first one, count the number of photos viewed. Remember in this photo, we had one trigger when my photo is tapped, then do quite a lot of things. Okay, we are going to add yet another action here, which is going to be an action on my analytics engine. It has one action, report interaction. I have key, value, and comment. Those are three fields. You can enter value manually or use bindings. So here the key will be photo is viewed, and for the value I will store information from my data. So here I will get some data from my gallery, from my photo list. I will store probably the artwork name, so I know which picture was seen. And as a comment, I would probably go with the price, so I can easily make some statistics. How many times, what is the average price of the most viewed photos? Something like that. That's the good return on investment, a good way to measure the activity of the users. Okay, so that's one first report. Good. Then we want to navigate to the guestbook. So we'll add one button here. Sign our guestbook. Once more, please do not look at the design. Right? You would do something much better than I do. So sign our guestbook. This is going to first navigate to a new scene. And here I'm going to go to my create a form. Create a form scene is the one with the guestbook we created earlier. Using a crossfade, okay. And then for this action, I will say I will report an interaction, which is a navigation, and let's say to guestbook. Okay, and I can move it up so the interaction is reported before moving to the new space. So that's number 2. Okay, and last thing we need to do is in the create form. Here I want now, when I click my send button, I don't want anymore to add a new row into my Excel file. Instead of that, I'm going to use the analytics engine, and I will report a new interaction, which is guestbook is signed. For the value, I will enter the email address. So as we did before for the add row, that's the same mechanism. Email inputs, I need the text. And for the comment, well, it's already done, because the report interaction has the same parameter as for the add row. That's magic. Okay, let's go back to the gallery and test our work. And then I will show you how to retrieve these analytics. As I mentioned, they are going to be sent to the My Intuiface server, and this is a very easy way to measure the activity on your kiosks. So, first thing, I will click on one picture and I will try to take new ones compared to this morning session. The vintage traction. Okay, I clicked on number 1. I will click on another one. Let's say one from the Panthera, Majestic Panther. Okay, that's number 2. And let's take a third one. The Pirogue Sunset. That's nice. Okay, so I tapped 3 photos. Then I'm going to navigate to the guestbook. So that's a navigation action. And here I will enter another email, another address at intulab.com, and another super comment for my analytics. Okay, send Once more, normally you would navigate to a new space saying congratulations, thank you for signing our guestbook, blah, blah, blah. The analytics are sent every 30 seconds as a batch, right? So you store the report interaction, and then every 30 seconds we send the web request to the server so we don't saturate your network. And then here from the My Intuiface portal, you can retrieve these analytics. So let me show you that in my browser. So when you are, I'm logged in on my account, webinar@intulab.com, and when you are an Enterprise Edition user, you can retrieve all the analytics collected over the past year. You can select the time frame here. You can select the devices, all devices or a specific one, and which applications you want to track. And then just click download. This will download the analytics into an Excel file. Very easy to consult. So let's have a look. We are the 19th and this is tonight's session. So these ones are the new ones. I have 5 entries. I was running an experience on my machine on a composer running Windows. The name of the experience is the webinar data, the session of 1 p.m. So that's the one we are running right now. In the first scene, which was named using an Excel file, I have 4 entries. 3 photo is viewed with the vintage traction, the Panther and the Sunset with the different prices. And then I had a navigation action to the guestbook. Okay. And then in another scene, which was named create a form, I had an action called guestbook is signed with my 2 parameters, my other address and my other super command for my analytics. Very, very easy to use. Just put the key reports you want into your experience, and then you can find them for all your devices running on the planet directly in this single file. Another way of retrieving the information is using a web service. So if you already have some analysis tools like Google Analytics or whatever, you can use the web service with your credential keys to access these logs programmatically. And everything is documented on the website. Just check the knowledge base. I think we covered quite a lot of topics today. We talked about the interface assets. We saw how to import data using Excel, using a web service, how to use the off-the-shelf interface assets like the clock, like the weather, like the Twitter. I mentioned that you can create your own interface asset. You have a bunch of articles about that, and have a look. We have 1 article per interface asset available. Regarding the analytics, you have a main article which with the overview about the analytics and then how to use the interface asset itself, as I did today, calling the report interaction action, and then how to download the different analytics, either using the Excel file from the management console or using the web service I mentioned. And all the links are here. After I close this webinar, I'm going to publish this experience and share it with all of you so you can have a look at it, see how I built it, and just modify it. I really thank you for your attention today, and of course we're going to stay connected a bit more with Mihai to answer your questions offline. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.